I had the original cassette, which is like this looks, and okie dokie. And this was released in 1998 for Two Moons or Second Moon Records, a subsidiary branch of a larger record company called Mascot Records. So Mascot Records was the parent label for Two Moons. Now there are many things to be discussed in this material. Some things related to the name of the band, which is an interesting discussion as well. The reason why this band is being brought to a channel belonging to the Romanian underground metal scene, because these are interesting points as well to be made, why we decided to bring Sear Bliss and so on and so forth. But all these are discussions that have to do with some sort of a fan base, or with people that have been with the band for very many years, and maybe they are most interested in this. But for a larger audience, I will start this material by highlighting what I consider to be the main point of attraction and the best thing that this album called The Haunting has to offer. So the most interesting thing, and I think that the main point of attraction is to be found in the composition itself. So in the way that the release was constructed, and I will attempt some sort of an aesthetic interpretation. As I said, the release appeared in 1998, and now we are in 2023. So there were 25 years have passed since its initial release. So 25 years was time enough for me to listen to the record for as many times as I wanted to listen, to read everything that was written about it, and to actually think what I want to say about it, should I ever want to make a review. And also later on we will discuss why we choose this one and not Phantoms or Letter from the Edge or other releases of the band. Now, I would say that the most attractive element is in the composition, or in the way in which the album was conceived. And the album, which truly stands out in the international scene, was that it was constructed by means of three elements. It was constructed by means of waves, by means of edges, and by means of tones or tonalities. And this is an unusual way to construct the skeleton of an album, and all the instruments and the voice included kind of reproduce waves, edges, and tonalities. So whether we are talking about atypical instruments or about normal instruments, but used in a very atypical manner. So as I said, waves. Waves is the first element of construction in here. Waves in the dark waves from the dark waters of the soul. Waves in the sense that the human soul and the human subconsciousness is made of silent dark waves of devotion, and many other types of frightening tentacular meanderings. Waves are known to carry things from the past. They are known to carry distant meanings and many other such dangerous entities from the past that perhaps died a long time ago, but they left a very powerful track. And this music is kind of capable to regain the heat of those lost tracks. And things pretty much happen like in a novel by Virginia Woolf, instead, in the sense that this is a music without a plot as such, without a plot per se. But it's a music overflowing with dark waves of devotion. And instead of describing major events or major happenings between characters in order to push the story forward, the band makes the narrative move forward by following the hours that pass within a day, or the days that pass within a season. And this music contains very little action, but much movement in time from the present to the past and backwards, and from the past into the present. And it is composed by means of prolonged, decent movements from one state of mind to the other state of mind, or from a person's external gestures towards a person's internal thoughts, and kind of makes a connection between a person's radical gestures and the hidden thoughts that he or she had behind those gestures. Now, instrumentally speaking, such waves are expressed within the music by means of sweeps, and we have jazzy sweeps as an element of originality, and not only by sweeps but by means of crescendos as well, that are there. The crescendos are there to express some very dark devotions, and waves are also known to hold deeper hidden meanings. So this would be the first element of construction, that are waves, and the way the instruments and the vocal parts reproduce the movement of waves. The second element of construction are the edges, and the edge as such is a pretty central concept into the music of the band. If you are just to think about the title of their latest release, called Letters from the Edge. So this is a kind of band that is strongly bound from a conceptual point of view to the notion of edge, and the edges are being used like they are being used in a painting. That is, the musicians are working with hard and soft, luminous and shady edges, and edges provide a sort of intensity for the layers that they engage, helping these layers become more visible, more clear, and also helping these layers merge with each other into a strong final signature. And this strong final signature is that of a rationally incomprehensible ethereal darkness. And such edges are mostly expressed at the level of instrumentation, and they are visible from a technical point of view, or from the point of view of the genres that are being brought to the table by this release. And we find here elusive and ultra subtle edges of gothic metal, of doom metal, of melodic death metal, of classical delicacy as far as the guitar strings are concerned. All of them resulting not into black metal, but into something like black metal, to quote Andras Nogic, something that resembles black metal, but it's definitely not black metal, maybe dark metal. And another important element is that edges also have the meaning of fractures, and the band uses fractures in the form of tempo changes and tone setting. And regarding the tone setting, it's fascinating how powerful and how clear the electric guitars enter each song. And the fractures, what they do is to open up the perspective into stranger and more progressive forms of unfamiliarity. Pretty much, as I said in the beginning, these forms of unfamiliarity are achieved either by means of atypical instrumentation or by means of normal instrumentation used in a very atypical way. And such edges are achieved with elegance, and they are pretty much like the cuts and cracks that are very sexy on a lady's evening dress, I would say like this. Now, waves and edges, and the final element of construction are the tones or the tonality. And the band offers some almost color-like tonalities within the sound. The tuneful melodies that carry the song forward do this by grace of a powerful and hidden sense of wonder. The tonality alone, I would say, is capable to capture the strong appeals from a person's memory, and hold the feeling or the sentiment until that feeling or until that sentiment is deserved. And to hold back a feeling or a sentiment until it is truly deserved may actually be the real essence of black metal. And in this way, such tonalities liberate the center of gravity and allow it to flow freely or to float in interesting young directions. And relating to this subject, the subject of a unique tonality, it must also be mentioned that the fact that the vocalist András Nagy worked extremely hard to find the right vocal part for every single line and the most unexpected and fresh sound for the effect to be what that effect needs to be. No instrument is ever used to fill in any kind of gap. Nothing is playing on compensation in here because sometimes musicians put extra layers of keyboards just to cover some gaps inside the music or to fill in some things that they don't know how to fill in otherwise. But none of these things happen in here. The main quality of András Nagy's voice is to be found in the timbre of that voice, and the timbre, the special timbre of his voice comes from personal experiences. So in the timbre and not in the ability to climb God knows what kind of octaves. The final result of the usage of waves, edges with a subtle meaning of fractures and of tonalities is that the album is pretty much able to create an ecosystem of its own. An ecosystem that contains, as you can see on the cover, absolutely no sun. An ecosystem that can thrive and can grow into the absence of the sun. And what the album does is that it reveals and it explores this kind of an ecosystem. It's also the kind of album that one can find no substitute for the force and for the beauty of its processes. It is an album on which the creation of every song is very transparent and beautifully clear and beautifully transparent. And it is also music done by somebody who knows what he's talking about because he has always been there. And if we are to make a reference to the song Hell Within, which is the second song, it is said that people in hell have always somehow been there. And that is why they love their inner darkness as much as they do, and that is why they know it so well. They know their inner darkness so well, and that is why they can speak from their dying inner sun to the listener's dying inner sun, to come once again to the idea that there is absolutely no solar presence on this album. In this context, perseverance means that the band never feels or grows old in any way. There is a majestic potency in the passionately fragile and triumphantly epic nature of the fertility of the sound. Fertility equals in here the capacity of gathering strength and determination from your most hidden emotions, so that the overall feeling becomes more and more absorbing. Prominency means that Mr. András Nagy knows exactly how to inject an extra layer of performative personality and manages to make every stylistic detour an engaging one, and anything may be said about this this release, but not that it's missing any kind of chemistry. It's actually full of chemistry, and this is a pretty classical release. It's not an eccentric release in any way. And here it's a very interesting thing, because here it kind of proves a big point. So if you don't make it an eccentric or an extravagant release, but you keep it classical, then by being less eccentric or less filled with extravagance, the music becomes even more compelling and it adds even more instrumental flavor. Things that seem understated are in fact overstated if you know how to listen to them. And another very interesting aspect is that it manages to stimulate the listener into, I would say, the pure violence of one's own mind and into the horrendous wisdom of life, if we are to quote the lyrics from the first song, Tunnels of Vision, by playing on destimulation, destimulation being the opposite of stimulation. Destimulation here means that the black metal parts are being played in slow tempos, in apparently simple but strong guitar riffs, like on the song Tunnels of Vision, where heavy and razor clear guitar chords alternate between the left speaker and the right speaker of your stereo. So we could say that nothing stands out on this, but everything stands out. Simultaneously, nothing stands out, but simultaneously everything stands out. Because nothing overpowers anything, no instrument is overplayed, everything comes from flair, and flair refers to that special or instinctive aptitude or ability for doing something very well, for the stylishness and originality. And nothing is diluted, everything is, I wouldn't say dense, but rich in vivid expressions. Songs have this quality to sparkle like the snow sparkles in the winter sun, to quote the lyrics from as the lyrics of the Land of Silence say. And we are not dealing with a skeletal album, but with an album that plays on the fascination of the skin and of the flesh. An album that is a testimony to the fact that the human stream of consciousness stops nowhere at being intense and inspiring in its redeeming, revealing and liberating escapisms. So as you can see, the haunting is strongly bound from a conceptual point of view to the previous release. If on the Phantoms the eagle soars or rises high into the sky, the same idea is played differently on the haunting, where the same eagle flies down into the abyss of the human subconsciousness. So these two releases are more or less part of the same story. So that was the first part of the material, where we described the music from the point of view, or for some more general listeners. And by general listeners, I don't understand the listeners that listen to Beyoncé and put this one in the cassette player of their car, but more general listeners that, I don't know, study the fashion design or letters, and perhaps they have the curiosity to see how the aesthetic experience appears on this one as well. For the second part of this material, we will address a more specialized audience, not specialized in the sense that they have some schools where they learned about metal, but specialized in the sense that they have been in the metal scene since the 90s, and some of them even as early as the 80s. I consider Sear Bliss, not this particular release, but all of the releases of the band, I consider this band being the best that Eastern Europe had to offer in the 90s, and even nowadays, I would say. Mr. András Nagy is quite of a visionary figure, in my opinion, pretty much like Jules Verne or something like that. A guy who was always way ahead of his time, and even The Haunting was a material that was a little bit too deep into the avant-garde movement for 1998, but it still stands out today as well. And when I say that it's the best band from Eastern Europe, or from the countries that were behind the Iron Curtain in the 90s, I'm actually saying that they are better than the Greek bands such as Rotting Christ, Varatorn or Necromancia, even though they started in the 80s, but the Hungarians did it better, and I would even say that they are better than the Polish guys from Behemoth or Graveland, and definitely better than all the other bands that were around at the time. Actually, in my opinion, but this is just a personal opinion, they were miles above the rest of the bands from Eastern Europe, and that is why they managed to perform live with Marduk in its glorious days, or with Tatsogwa from Germany, actually extremely ferocious bands back into those days. Now, as I said, 25 years was a long period for me to be able to read a lot of things about The Haunting, and for me to be able to form an opinion. And I kind of say that I disagree with most of the things that I read, in the sense that many Hungarian sites or many Hungarian magazines present this one as being the best black metal album into the history of the Hungarian black metal. I would say it's not the best black metal album in the Hungarian history. Is the first release of the band, which is Phantoms, still the best black metal release in Hungary, but this one is extremely special as well, since it's totally a totally different musical experience and basically a gate into unknown territories. Also, in many other circumstances, they keep on saying that there is no other release that the band produced similar to this one. I would say that one is false as well. I would say that the second album that pretty much followed The Haunting was the one called Eternal Recurrence. This one is pretty much done in the vein of Haunting, but with a different production, with different ideas, with much more complicated things. But even if it's a fabulous release, Eternal Recurrence, I would say it's not as organic and is not as natural as this one. This is more natural, more wild. This one is a little bit more intellectual. And if we open the Eternal Recurrence CD, an interesting thing is written in here: no triggers, no editing, and no plug-ins used on this album. This is a pure natural sound only. So basically, this is the mentality with which András Nagy worked all across his releases, and pretty much not only Eternal Recurrence follows the footsteps of The Haunting, but I would say that even Letters from the Edge pretty much places some footsteps into this direction as well. Another thing that I read about it is that there is no other release in the international scene that is being done in a similar manner. That is with a brass section, this meaning trumpet and trombone played like Szücs Gergely, I suppose is the name of the person who plays this kind of instruments, trumpet and keyboards. Szücs Gergely, yes, Mr. Szücs Gergely plays the trumpet and the keyboards, and pretty much people said that nobody else plays the brass section, the trumpet and the trombone the way he plays it. No, that's kind of false in my opinion as well. There is a Norwegian band called Beyond Dawn, where on the Revelry release, something also from the 90s, they do the trumpet and the trombone in a way which is very much similar to what Sear Bliss did. Truth be told, in another musical territory. This is not so much a dark metal release, it's like something, I don't know, The Cure, Depeche Mode, more pop sounding like album, but still the darkness is there, and the brass section produces similarly dark sounds, or dark sounds that are similar to what you can hear on the Haunting album. The release is not as such a black metal release, it is a dark metal release, and pretty much it occupies a place in the Hungarian history kind of similar to the place occupied in the Finnish metal history by a band like Dekoraya. The originality of the dark feeling pretty much is the same as in the case of Dekoraya. Another very interesting thing about The Haunting is the way in which the lyrics themselves perfectly describe the music, and this is something due to the fact that András Nagy first composed the music and then listened to the music carefully and allow himself to be immersed into that musical landscape, and he wrote the lyrics. So basically, if you read the lyrics of the songs, then perhaps this is the best way to describe the music. And just to take a couple of examples in here, if you look at a song like To Hell Within, you can feel the misery descending on your days, and you can feel that you'll have to pay whatever price you have to pay to get prepared, so you will be able to understand the internal hell in which you are living in. if you listen to the song Soulless, which is a beautiful song on this release as well, you can you have an experience like watching somebody's star shining distantly into the horizon, far away up in the night. And if you listen to another song, which is the song Left in the Dark, a song with a cosmic flavor, I would say, you can basically look at at your memories appearing in silence. You can feel that there is no existence, only a never-ending flotation in the sempiternal darkness of cosmos. But perhaps the most famous lyrics on The Haunting are the lyrics on the song called The Haunting, which is the 6th song, and everybody quoted these lyrics, and the lyrics say, you can embrace with one movement the loneliness of your mind. Do you feel your consciousness in your hand and the similarity with one movement? So embracing the consciousness with one movement of your hand and feeling the similarity of your consciousness with that one single movement. This is perhaps the most philosophical line on the release, which kind of speaks about the relation between a person's radical gestures and the way that his consciousness is being built up brick by brick. For instance, when you say your farewell to a person, you make a radical gesture. For example, when you declare war to somebody, also the power of the gesture is capable to bring all the power of your consciousness into that gesture, pretty much like the octopus does when the octopus attacks its prey. It kind of sends brain cells into the very tentacles so that the tentacles are more capable to grasp whatever the octopus wants to grasp. And if you fail to catch it, the idea could change. If you fail to catch this kind of an idea that could change your life, the world dissipates on the water surface. So it's something that is forever gone if you cannot grasp it with the appropriate gesture, with the gesture that can encapsulate your entire consciousness in that moment. Probably it's the most present thing you can do, and hence we have a feeling of the majestic, which comes from this kind of an introspective intensity, and which is further refined into melodic composition and further sharpened with a distinct metallic feel. Concerning the name of the band, according to what the band has said in the interviews, has to do with a poetic phrase taken from the poetry of the French poet Charles Baudelaire, and I have had enough time in 25 years to read as much Baudelaire as I could, but I could find this exact phrase Sear Bliss nowhere in Baudelaire, so I think it's something that has to do with a Hungarian translation of poetry from Baudelaire. Because things, when you translate poetry from Hungarian into other languages or from other languages into Hungarian, pretty much the final result is can be very different. So I think András must have read a Hungarian translation of French Baudelaire, and probably there is where he found the phrase coined in this way. But still, if we read some other poetries from Charles Baudelaire, such as The Lament of an Icarus, we find constructions such as, scorched by the desire for the beautiful, I will not know the bliss of giving my name to that abyss. Or if we read the poetry To She Who Is Too Light-Hearted, we find the construction, I felt the sunlight sear my breast like some ironic weapon. So there are enough constructions with searing and blissing and such similarity of terms in Baudelaire for us to rest assured that there was a certain Baudelairean influence to it. As I said, I don't agree with what was written about this album, and I don't even agree with what the band themselves stated about this release. At a certain point, they claimed on Facebook that due to some mistake in the mixing and the mastering of the product, it sounded so weird and so unique, but it was not intentional. Basically, it was something that the sound engineers of the Two Moons Records did, and unfortunately, Mr. András Nagy decided to remix and re-edit the material, which is always a very bad idea in my opinion. Black metal and this kind of metal is always a first-time experience only, nobody ever likes something that is re-edited or remastered, and they did it, and I bought it and I hated it. So I just went back to the first edition, and all this review refers to the first edition. Probably they decide to re-edit and remaster the productions because they do it from the point of view of a person who is doing the mixing or the sound engineering, but they don't do it from the point of view of the listener. The listener will never wish for this kind of a reissue of an album. They will always keep the strong personal imprint of the first experience. So basically, if you re-edit it, you kind of take all the magic out of it and send into some abstract mathematical world. And this is quite a sad case, which reminds me of another similar case into the international metal scene, which had to do with Peter Tengtron and Hypocrisy. And Peter Tengtron from Hypocrisy also did this with the Fourth Dimension album. He considered it the sound as being somehow inadequate and decided to remix it. And in the documentary or something like that called 22 or 25 years of chaos and confusion, Peter Tengtron said that Peter Tengtron said that the problem was about the Four Dimension album. The problem was that someone left a fucking keyboard in the studio where I worked. So I started playing on it and writing songs together with it. Apocalypse, the Four Dimension and stuff like that with keyboards. We went to this fancy studio in Stockholm, Park Studio. A lot of big bands have been recording there. We got a very big budget for it, you know, we wanted to spend a lot of money and go to a fancy studio. Maybe we'd get a good sound at the same time. It went the opposite way. The people there didn't know anything about metal or nothing. It's hard for the band to try to say, but we want this or that sound. And the guys at the place went like, yeah, I know. We trusted them, and it became like the worst sounding album ever. I know a lot of people like it, but sound is just so terrible. So this is what Peter Tengtron said about the Four Dimension album, which in my opinion is the best Hypocrisy album ever released. It has a truly beautiful sound, the clearest sound and the darkest possible sound of a Hypocrisy album, and it managed to bring some classical guitar strings into death metal, which is fascinating. So I think these are two big mistakes, re-editing this one and re-editing the Four Dimensions, because these kind of materials sound perfectly the way they are in their first edition. So I would disagree. I would say that the guys in Park Studio in Stockholm knew exactly what they need to do with the sound for the Four Dimension album, and the guys in the Two Moon record company knew exactly how to make this one sound perfectly. Another interesting thing that I read and that I agree with is concerning the way the brass section is performed, and by means of brass we understand trumpet and trombone, and this is a unique thing into the overall history of metal scene. Both Beyond Dawn and Sear Bliss play with this kind of instruments, with brass and with trombone. And on this release, Gergely Szücs made an outstanding performance. He gave a forlorn, melancholic, but at the same time awakening or elevating atmosphere to the whole release. Making this kind of release is basically impossible to plagiarize, because when you are a very original band or a very original musician, you cannot be copy-pasted. Friedrich Nietzsche could not be plagiarized, and Charles Baudelaire could not be plagiarized, and that is why Sear Bliss cannot be plagiarized either, because it's so original and it's so uniquely done, because nobody can play like them, except if that somebody is approaching another musical genre, such as is the case in here. And the final thing that needs to be said in here has to do with the reception of the band in Romania, and why we decided to include this material on a channel dedicated to the Romanian metal underground scene. There are a couple of reasons in here. The first one is that András Nagy is a guy who has strong Transylvanian roots, and the second one is the fact that Transylvania as such is the subject of very many songs. Although in a subtle way, many of the Sear Bliss songs and lyrics speak about Transylvania, and once again, the last reason is that it was the best material, it was the best band in the entire Eastern Europe. Phantoms was the best black metal release, and The Haunting the most wild and savage dark metal release. Concerning the reception of the band in Romania, when they released their first demo, Pagan Winter, nobody heard about it in here, or maybe 3 or 4 persons that were in very close circles. But when Phantoms came out in 1996, I think, everybody was chuffed to bits here in Romania. They were taken aback and broken into pieces by that fabulous release, and nobody could really understand how is it possible that just a few kilometers across the border these guys are capable to produce such a music and sign a contract with Mascot Records. That was something unprecedented, and basically the whole Phantom release was extremely popular in Romania. Then came the second one, The Haunting, which kind of had a, I would say, weaker distribution and a different sound, so it got distributed in here as well, but not to such a great extent. It was something like more eclectic, and for restricted audience, those who were very interested into dark things actually managed to get the album. Then at a certain point, András Nagy gave an interview in a magazine where he kind of gave, I would say, some unnecessary explanations regarding to the song Land of Silence. Maybe people in Romania weren't particularly happy with those explanations, because nobody who listened to the song attributed any kind of historical or political value to it. Everybody who listened to it received it as a purely pagan song. But anyway, that and the following 2 albums kind of caused a hiatus. People continue listening to it, but maybe not as enthusiastically as they did with Phantoms. And all this was restored here in Romania with the release of the Letters from the Edge. In my opinion, a release that pretty much goes into the direction of The Haunting and Eternal Recurrence, and basically the interest in Romania for Sear Bliss reached very high peaks again with their latest release, Letters from the Edge. As some final words, this one was bought in Budapest. In the days of its release, it costed a huge amount of money. I remember that morning perfectly when I bought it. I actually wanted to, you know, have some Hungarian breakfast, maybe even a beer or something, and then go back to Romania. And I forgot the fact that in the morning the street restaurants weren't particularly open, so I just roamed the streets towards the Keleti train station, and I came across a newspaper corner shop where I saw this and spent a huge fucking amount of money to buy it, and had to come back to Romania with my empty stomach because I had no more money to buy food or drink. So extremely expensive at the time. Thank you so much.